Okay. I know it isn't perfect, but I bloody love it. Number 8, Game of Thrones. Welcome to Hakuna MaChatter, the diversity in film and TV discussion channel, helping you to better understand the importance of diversity in film and TV. Okay. I get that the final season ripped the show apart, blah blah blah, I've heard it all before. Can we just move on? Because on the whole, Game of Thrones is a brilliant show. With the Lord of the Rings films finishing in 2003 and the Harry Potter films finishing in 2011, we kids that grew up with fantasy in their lives were rewarded in adulthood with a long-form fantasy story filled to the brim with political intrigue. Yes, also gore, sex and swearing. It literally came through as an R-rated Lord of the Rings / Harry Potter. It started as a show that had a central core of characters playing political mind games, unwittingly juggling the lives of thousands of people. It then moved into a bloodthirsty, revenge-seeking civil war that split the lands of Westeros into several kingdoms, unwittingly juggling the lives of thousands of people. And finally finished with unification, survival, villains becoming heroes, heroes becoming villains, and a freaky as hell, all-seeing, staring kid to rule them all, knowingly juggling the lives of thousands of people. All the while, dragons! Game of Thrones is one of those unique things that anything anywhere near it arriving to TV will always be compared to it. Game of Thrones started the same way in regards to Lord of the Rings, until it furnished its own path, and by the end, set the benchmark with what can be done in TV. In my entire top 10 list of TV shows, only 4 were released after Game of Thrones, and 3 of those are animation. Live action films with 45 to 60 minute long episodes just don't hook me that well. And in terms of release date, only 1 show since Game of Thrones has hooked me while simultaneously making it onto this list. But that's a future video and you're gonna have to wait for that. Alright, so let's move on to talking about my favourite season, episode, character, and the show's diversity. So starting off with my favourite season, and I have to hand it to season 4. After the Red Wedding at the end of season 3, it was difficult to know as to where this show could possibly go. Of course, book readers knew exactly what was going to happen, and they knew that there were loads of wonderful nuggets for us show viewers to discover. What season 4 did brilliantly for me, and this comes more in hindsight than anything, is that it began to cross over the characters who had effectively been running the show with the characters who would eventually see the show out. The likes of Joffrey, Tywin, and the vast majority of the Wildling army moved on to meet with the old gods and the new. Tyrion and Sansa both escaped King's Landing and began to forge the paths to their eventual success. Jon staked his claim as a leader in battle and a man of all people. And Dany began to feel the pressure of mothering dragons while ruling a kingdom. All of that thrown in with the Purple Wedding, Tyrion's trial, the Mountain versus the Viper, the Battle of Castle Black, Brienne versus the Hound. Yo, that shit was insane! Moving on to my favourite episode, and interestingly enough, it doesn't feature in season 4. Season 4 had some of my favourite moments, but no one episode champions above the rest, and certainly no other episode in the show rises above Battle of the Bastards. We get treated to TV's greatest ever battle, a battle we weren't even supposed to actually get. Reading the trivia section of this episode's IMDb page, the original estimation was for 42 days of shooting. Now, of course, due to budget constraints, they had to reduce this to 28 days, and in the end only had 25 days of shooting as they had to cancel the final 3. This in turn meant that the battle changed from Jon winning the battle on the field through his cavalry to his forces being near wiped out and a mishmash of shots following Jon through the battle, resulting in the final confrontation taking place within inside the walls of Winterfell. Oh, and I mentioned that the budget didn't allow for 40 days worth of shooting. The budget for this episode is reported to be upwards of $30 million. The budget for the entire season is reported to be $100 million. Also, this episode won 6 Emmy Awards, equaling that of Broadwalk Empire's pilot episode. Now, I've never watched Boardwalk Empire, so if you have, let me know the comparison please down in the comment section down below. And not only did we get the Battle of the Bastards in this episode, but we got the Battle of Meereen as well, in which we get to see the culmination of Dany's growth as both a commander and a leader. With the aid of her dragons, Daario the Dothraki, and Yara and Theon's Iron Fleet, she is able to rip through the Slavers' armies and the Sons of the Harpy, with her sights realigned on Westeros. One insane episode, two insane battles, with two eyes firmly fixed on the show's home straight. My favourite character in the show is Tyrion Lannister. Need I say more? Oh, I do. Cool. So, what I love about Tyrion is that he is that person that just doesn't give a shit. He was born different to everyone else, and as he says to Jon in season 1, he wears it like a suit of armour. Now granted, he is born into the richest, most influential family in Westeros, but that doesn't stop insults and abuse being hurled at him, and through it all, he is just himself. And let's just take a moment to recognise that Tyrion would not be Tyrion without Peter Dinklage. Throughout his whole time as Tyrion, Dinklage sets the bar, and when it gets to Tyrion's trial in season 4, Dinklage raises that bar to new heights. A lot of Game of Thrones episodes and moments left me frozen to the spot. Shocked, surprised, devastated, you know it all. But after watching that speech for the first time, and his demand for a trial by combat left me floating in realms I have no way of explaining. Okay, so onto the show's diversity. Race diversity, I'm gonna get this one out the way. It's abysmal. In a fantasy world, I generally hope for more. This is a fictional world, and it draws heavy inspiration from the War of the Roses. People of other races would have been living in England long before that war. So for me, really, there is no viable reason as to why the land of Westeros didn't and couldn't have more race diversity. This kind of diversity was reserved for the Dothraki, for other kingdoms in Esteros, for the Kingdom of Dawn in Westeros, as if people of race had absolutely no wanderlust. And please don't point me in the direction of any background extras or characters with 1 or 2 lines. I'm talking about series regulars. In all of the show, there are only really 4 characters that stand out in terms of race diversity, these being Khal Drogo, Grey Worm, Missandei, and Prince Oberyn. However, the show's gender diversity is incredible. Well, it starts off slow, but from about midway to the end of the show, it really is incredible. The growth of characters such as Cersei, Dany, Sansa, Arya, and Brienne is marvellous. And this showed when both Dany and Sansa became frontrunners for ending up on the Iron Throne by the end of the series. Game of Thrones wasn't afraid to allow its ladies to lead and near enough take control towards the end of the show. And the scene where Cersei and Dany come face to face for the first time creates this palpable force that is enigmatic of how far female characters have travelled. I don't know, for me it was a very natural progression, serving both character and story that played out beautifully. One day I'll sit down and watch all of Game of Thrones again. It's such an epic that it's impossible to just chuck on a random episode here or there. I want to give it proper time. I want to allow myself to be fully immersed in it, to appreciate the minor details as well as the big events and battles. Make sure to join me next week for place number 7 on the list, with a show that is yet to really break into the mainstream, but most certainly wins top points in terms of diversity, compelling storytelling, and an abundance of lovable characters. And if that doesn't quite spike your interest yet, then don't worry, it also has dragons in it. Until then, check out these other videos here and here. Make sure to subscribe with notifications turned on for future videos, and I'll see you then. Hakuna MaChatter.